If you really think about it, marriage can sound pretty ridiculous. It's where we take two individual people who basically get along really well together at a certain stage of their life and wonder why their individual differences end up driving them apart more than half the time. We assume this two become one mentality and expectations in all areas of their life together. We forget that we still have two individuals growing and changing in their individual ways in their individual lives. We forget the individuality that exists in our relationships, especially our most intimate ones. We begin keeping score. Those things that we once adored, found silly, and make those that we love who they are become the things that begin to annoy, irritate, and need to change. Kind of like that cute noise he used to make when he tasted something new is about as attractive as an emergency alert system test pattern. We start keeping track of those, and little by little, it begins to feel like we are rivals instead of partners. We had a wood-burning stove in our house when I was growing up. What that meant was that Dad and I had a lot of time cutting and splitting wood over the years. When it came to chunks of wood where the individual grains had grown closer together and even formed knots, the only way it was possible to split it down to the proper size for our stove was with this thing called a wedge. It's simply just a heavy piece of metal that looks very similar to an axe head. You take the wedge, find a possible weak spot in the grain, and then give it a few small taps until it stands on the log on its own. Then you simply hit that set wedge with a few strong slaps of a sledgehammer, and then even the tightest and knotted grain will pop loose. Every wedge begins with a few taps. It's a much slower process, but as long as you don't remove the wedge from the log, it will almost always split it. Our closest and most intertwined relationships are like those logs. Unfortunately, so many of us have at least felt the taps of setting a wedge from time to time. In your time together, you are going to be talking about some ways and places wedges might find their way in, places where we are keeping score, places where expectations don't leave room for healthy individuality. What I really hope for you is that it's a time where you see the beauty and silliness in our individual selves again. I'll be back shortly. Have you ever noticed how resilient our bodies are? We are fragile and can get hurt fairly simply, but overall we are so perfectly made for our surroundings that we continue to thrive as human beings despite all the hardships humanity as a whole has faced. We can heal when hurt, problem solve and manipulate our surroundings, communicate in complex and nonverbal ways, and adapt to hardships like no other species. In short, we've been built for conflict. I know that can be a scary word, especially when we're talking about relationships, but it's actually a good thing. We have been made and invited to be co-creators with God. He set the universe into form and order, but we have been made to help complete what has been perfectly designed. In order for that to take place, we must be able to thrive in conflict. What can become problematic are the intentions we have or perceive in those conflicts. When I think back at those conflicts in my closest relationships, I realize they either escalated or calmed based on whether or not I intended to help or harm or felt like I was being helped or harmed. I really wish I could say that every time things have gotten bad, it was all just a big misunderstanding and I was really just trying to show love. But let's face it, the truth is it's the opposite. It's been in the times where I have forgotten the most important thing in our relationship, love. The times where love is my intention haven't always been rosy either, but they are the times when I have gained wisdom. It's where I have learned the most about myself, my partner, and my faith. To paraphrase theologian Daniel Williams, he says, love doesn't end all conflict. It's the arena in which it's to take place. Love is what binds us together with our partners and God. It gives us room to be very much ourselves, gain experience and wisdom, and engage in building up instead of tearing down. conflict is inevitable. It's not something we should just work to avoid. It's something we should work to make sure that happens in the arena of love. It's been my experience that when we do, no matter how big and scary it might first appear, the best of it is, God is with us.